Everybody, Happy New Year, healthy New Year. May this year be a year at least of good health. And I welcome everybody on Zoom and everybody in person here who stepped out in this quasi-rainy night to be in person together. There were several of you who were at the Mahasangha Sit yesterday morning, at which I talked about the 8 awakenings of great beings. I'm going to talk about that this evening as well. It's one of my favorite teachings. It's the last of the Buddha's teachings before his parinirvana. And it's very practical. It's a very practical way to keep in mind during the day how to practice. So I wanted to go through it again. It's part of the treasure. The real treasure of the Dharma is always to be found not so much in books and texts, although this is where this teaching was preserved, but where it was practiced and realized and manifested was in the everyday life of generations, of thousands of people over thousands of years, actually. It is the way that we live into the noble way. And so this is the way that we can, it helps us make our choices as to how we're going to conduct, how we're going to think about our lives and the choices we have to make, and how we will be conducting ourselves. And it is an essential part of the Bodhisattva way. And how to live out the teachings comes from our understanding of them. So they are only according to how thoroughly we understand them, how thoroughly we take them on. And no matter how many times we revisit essential teachings, there's always more to be seen, just as there's always more to be seen in our own life as we live into our life. So we manifest the meaning of the Sangha jewel by how we conduct ourselves all together within the group itself, as well as how we live into our families and our neighborhoods and our workplaces. And online, very much online, is another neighborhood that is kind of the neighborhood of chaos and anything goes. So it's really important to take on these teachings to help us know how to respond. So one of the blessings that we receive through this practice is, first of all, the fact that we can be awake, that this is the primary value in our life, all comes from being really awake and present right here and now. And being clear about what our situation is, not wandering around in confusion. Or when we're wandering around in confusion, we know that we're wandering around in confusion. It seems like a very small distinction to make, but it's really significant in the effect of on how much care we take with any of our behavior and our choices. Recognizing that there's really no separation of self and the world. This world is our self, and our self is our world, is our refuge, is our home. And so what is our point of view about this? This is the challenge that we take up in practice, in Zen practice, holding the view that this life is complete in every moment, just as it is, has profound consequences for how we approach each moment. aware that the choices that we make moment by moment directly touch the world and have effects in the world. All of our life is found only in each single moment of experience. So the great teacher Eihei Dogen wrote a fascicle titled The 8 Awakenings of Great Beings, where he explores the scripture from the last of the Buddha's teachings, from the scripture of the Buddha's last teachings. So this is his commentary. And now we discern our own commentary on these teachings, on these realizations, through how we live them, how we understand them in our own life, in our own circumstances. So the first awakening of great beings, and great beings is referred to as, is the way that Buddhas are referred to, realized human beings who are really awake. The first awakening is having few desires. When we're really awake, we are very tuned into the action of a desire on our experience. How do we do this in a world that's based on desire, in a civilization where contentment is considered faulty? To be contented is to be a bit of a fool. And where ambition is the mark of a worthy human being. Having few desires may not immediately seem like such a great thing, like having few desires. But it means not chasing far and wide all of the objects of the five senses, the five sense desires, for our own completement, for our own sense of completion. Or chasing after new experiences for our sense of completion. Which is not to say we can't have a great enthusiasm for new experiences, but we are complete already. And that's the point of this. Chasing after all the stuff, or whatever we may have learned in our families of origin about what was most desirable if we're going to be a self-respecting human being. That's the karmic load that we all come in with. And it may be that in order to, in the family we grew up in, we needed to find wealth, we needed to find a social position, fame, gain. But the Buddha says, few desires is itself worthwhile. I remember the first time I came across this, feeling this profound sense of relaxation, having few desires. So desire was immediately discernible as a source of stress, which is, of course, the teaching. So having few desires, if we, from the standpoint of living with spiritual ease, instead we often live as though something is missing, and we need to find it outside of ourselves, in things, in experiences. Material wealth, social position. There's always this perennial sense of not enough. That's the cultural mindset, not enough. And then if we're settled into that position, when we gain something, we then become afraid of losing it. We have to hold on to it, or we have to get it again. So this practice is maintaining a view, requires us to maintain and develop a view, a stable view of what is most essential, and live according to that. We're reminded not to fall asleep and forget what's most essential. So the Buddha's words are, O you monks, recognize the person who has many cravings. His misery and troubles are many because he seeks for many benefits, gains, and advantages. The person of few desires is free of flattery and fawning when searching out the intentions of others. The heart of someone who behaves with few desires is, as a consequence, even-tempered, free from gloom, anxiety, sorrow, or fear. When coming in contact with things, he or she or they find a surplus, for they know no insufficiency. The one who has few desires experiences nirvana. This was surprising to come across this statement from the Buddha. The one who experiences few desires experiences nirvana. This is the name for having few desires. And of course, in our practice, we're always wondering, what's nirvana? Am I experiencing nirvana? What does it look like? Who will I be when I know nirvana? Well, you'll have few desires. The second awakening is to know how much is enough. And this is really terrifically practical. Do you know how much is enough? The eating practice in Zen practice is called oryoki, which means just enough. It's really it's very profound to live according to what is enough. What is just enough? That doesn't mean deprivation. It means enough. What's enough food? What's enough money or clothing or self-esteem or love? What is enough? What is the sensation of enough in the body when you feel like you have enough? What is the body sensation of that? So these are all ways to take this on kind of as a practice. What is enough? So look into the body right now. Can you tune into the sensation of this is enough, this is complete, nothing missing, right where we are. And another thing that's part of this is being able to see what's actually needed, which we can only do when we're really free of ideas about what's going on and be able to see directly what is the situation. And also being able to use what is readily available already, rather than adding. So think about, how would your life change if you were to take up the practice of having enough? And what challenges you with this one? These are all practice questions, how we work with them. The third awakening is to enjoy serenity. You can see how each of these is actually the same thing. It's just talking about a slightly different angle. Enjoying serenity. What Dogen called enjoying the tranquility of nirvana means leaving behind all the noise and hubbub for the solitude of the open country. The open field, the empty field, open to the largest span of awake awareness. Being established in this through regularly remembering and practicing remembrance. Remembrance is one of the factors of enlightenment. So when we remember, when we recollect our practice, we take refuge in the midst of whatever we're in, wherever we are, whatever the circumstances. When we remember, this is my practice, this is my moment. This moment is complete. is a kind of instantaneous shift, especially when you're really having a hard time, and you remember, this is it. This is my life right here and now. This is what's true right now. Being able to enjoy serenity requires us to be willing to enjoy seclusion and being willing to know peace. And this is particularly relevant in Zazen. When we sit Zazen, how willing are you to just give up everything and be thoroughly present right here? This often takes a goodly amount of a period of Zazen to even get to the place where you remember to be willing to let go and be present. Enjoy the tranquility of presence. So Dogen also says to enjoy serenity in seclusion in order to have the joy of serene non-doing. Serene non-doing could be a way of saying Zazen. All that we are in Zazen is being. We're not doing. We're simply being. Are you willing to be? So what is serenity in your own, what is your own experience of it? And what's lovely is when it's freely offered and you suddenly find yourself in that state. You might be walking in the woods and realize, and there's an all-pervasive sense of serenity. Or eating a delicious meal, or listening to music, or simply being in any setting. When you're waiting online in the supermarket, can you experience serenity? Why not? This is one of the things that Thich Nhat Hanh said at a retreat years ago that I attended. He said, actually what we are doing in this practice is cultivating contentment. Cultivating contentment. The fourth is putting forth diligent effort to engage ceaselessly in wholesome practice when nothing is too difficult. So it's especially useful, this diligent effort is especially useful in our ordinary life when we come across having to do something that we don't know how to do. And yet it's up to us to do it. And so what is diligent effort? Well, it's partly patience, it's partly faith, it's partly investigation, and then research. Getting on Google, find out how to do it, or whatever. Diligent effort is also what we expend in our lifelong practice, when we live a life of practice as a way of life. We are applying diligent effort. I was very struck yesterday during the Mahasangha Sit how most of the people there have been practicing for many, many years. And so that's part of it. It's just being willing to say, all right, this is what I do. This is part of what I do. Somebody once likened it to flossing. That's real commitment to long-term teeth health. This is long-term spiritual health, diligent effort. If your mind continues to slacken, it's like taking a break from hitting stones before they spark. You can't get fire that way. What I'm speaking of is diligent effort. That's the Buddha. So, especially in our ordinary daily lives, being diligent in our intention to be awake is essential. And it can also be called recollection. Recollecting that this moment is my moment to practice. So we always have to remember our deepest intention and not forget about it, or just visit it only on Sundays. And then the fifth is not to neglect mindfulness. And I just wanted to recollect that mindfulness is not just paying attention, although it is that. But it has several characteristics, and one is it includes absolutely everything. When we're being mindful, we are mindful of everything, including our reactions to whatever's going on. Everything's included in mindful. We are aware of being non-judgmental, which also means recognizing our judgments, our aversion or attraction, as part of mindfulness. So, absolutely everything, non-judgmental, and in the present moment. So not neglecting mindfulness is don't neglect being in the present moment. It's another way of saying maintaining right thought, which is one of the elements of the Noble Eightfold Path. And it helps you to guard Dharma awareness so you don't lose it. We're always practicing. And this is part of the beauty of the Bodhisattva way. A Bodhisattva is always practicing no matter where they are. They're always at the ready. Just like a scout, Girl Scout or a Boy Scout. Always be prepared to help, to be of service. And that's a lovely early training, actually. So, this is what the Buddha says about it. If you don't neglect mindfulness, then the robbers of desire cannot enter you. If mindfulness is continual, you will not be harmed even if you go into the midst of the robbers of the five senses. It's like wearing armor and going into a battlefield so there's nothing to be afraid of. Mindfulness is very helpful. What do we mean by mindfulness? Remember, it's not just paying attention. It's being in the present moment, non-judgmental, and includes everything. The sixth awakening is to practice meditation. And the reason to continue to practice meditation, no matter how long you've been doing it, is it maintains stability. The mind becomes steadily present. Awareness is steadily available. Your mind cannot be scattered. And the Buddha describes it this way, like a well-roofed house or a well-built embankment, which will help you maintain the water of understanding and keep you from being drowned, being flooded by the world of suffering and desire, even in the midst of it all. And the seventh is to cultivate wisdom, which is to listen, contemplate, practice, and realize the Dharma truths. This is where study comes in. Study of the texts, and also study of your own experience. This is very much a way of investigation. And when you do this, you're free from greed, and you can always reflect on yourself and avoid mistakes. One of the beauties of ongoing practice also is not being afraid of mistakes, and not being afraid of the person who makes mistakes, which frees us from shame. I mean, if we regard mistakes as learning, we learn from everything. These are the dharmas, all the phenomena that we either know and and respond to and interact with skill, or not. And when we don't, it's because we haven't fully understood the nature of whatever we're dealing with. So this is how we learn. Cultivating wisdom. And the Buddha says, wisdom is a reliable vessel to bring you across the ocean of sickness, old age, and death. I was talking with a friend yesterday about her mother, who is a lifelong, very devout Christian, who's dying right now. She's very, very ill. And she's very distressed. And she doesn't know what to do. She doesn't know how to face it. And prayer doesn't help. And I was thinking, not that I know, I might be in that state when I'm dying. You never know. But what came to my mind was, well, it was the way my cousin died fairly recently. All the way until his very last moment, he was giving. He was, anybody who visited him, he listened, he appreciated, he looked at them, he said their name. You know. And we can always give. And that's something that, the most important way to practice, says the Buddha, is dana, practicing generosity. And I thought, yeah, all the way up to the last moment, when you're suffering, you can always be giving in some way. It can be a really good release from suffering. So wisdom is a bright lamp that dispels ignorance. It's an excellent medicine for all that ails you, and a sharp axe to cut down the tree of delusion. These are some of the images that the Buddha used to talk about this particular realization. And then the eighth, is not to engage in hollow discussions, inner or outer. So to know the nature of your own thoughts. There are thoughts that lead to wisdom. There are thoughts that lead to skillful responses. And there are thoughts that bedevil us and that create a lot of suffering for us and other people. So don't engage in hollow discussions, and also with others. And that includes, one of the precepts is not to gossip. So to really be aware of the power of speech and to practice actively with it so that it contributes to well-being. And we use it when it's necessary. And sometimes it's necessary in profound ways, and sometimes it's necessary just to sweeten the social atmosphere. We don't always have to be in profound discussion. But we can be aware of the quality of our own speech. And if it's truthful, if it's necessary, if it's helpful. So it's really, these teachings are particularly straightforward. And we can use them to practice, in our daily practice. And also I just wanted to say in closing how helpful it is in our own practice, but also practicing in the Sangha. And they are a way to light up the awake way to live as a caring and responsible human being. This is the Buddha way. This is the Bodhisattva way. So I hope this is useful for all of us in beginning this new year, whatever it brings.